As we started, as Afrodita kind of mentioned about the monitoring, and that's where Signagelive is kind of focused, and it's about, with those smart technologies, moving away from the sorts of things that you could only get from a PC and using network monitoring tools. You're getting that functionality from the smart technologies as well. So you can get information such as how much RAM is being used, how much CPU is being used, if the temperature's hot. So these are all things that could focus your mind on, well, that player's got an issue that I need to get to before it goes to the blue screens, the black screens that you quite often see pictures of on social media about things going wrong with digital signage. It's also about being able to do proactive monitoring, but also about having an API in the background. So you don't have to use Signagelive necessarily to be able to get that data. You could be using a system you've already got in-house and be able to connect to our APIs to be able to pull that data in and then use it for your normal monitoring systems to fit in with your normal support systems. It's KPI driven, so you can affect that. It doesn't have to be our KPIs. We've got some default set so that they can say when things go into a warning or an alert state, or it can be however you want to do it. And if you're using multiple different types of hardware, so you're using a PC or a Samsung Smart Signage platform player, there might be reasons why some of those go into warning states different to the other platforms. So you can set against each player type the way that it will alert and give you warnings. That's kind of one way of reporting. The other way is right at the other end. So this is about monitoring the players, and then the other end is what are we actually putting on the screens and is it doing what it's supposed to. Now, proof of play instantly brings you into an advertising mindset, I guess, and that's obviously where it starts, about being able to prove that the adverts were played when they were supposed to and how someone purchased the spots that they purchased and whether it did actually do that and whether you can then get a return on investment. But the other way to look at it is actually being able to prove compliance. So were things shown, not just adverts, in the IPTV world, was the broadcast of the CEO talking shown at the right time? Was a kiosk used, a touchscreen kiosk used as many times as we wanted it to? These are all things that you can start to look at when you're looking at digital signage and understand, well, is the content that we've put on there actually working, and is it giving us the return on investment that we want? And you're not just getting that from being able to look and see, but you also be able to get it from the data. So just another way of looking at what you could use proof of play data for and the reporting data that you can get out of Signagelive. So what about IPTV? That's why we're all kind of here anyway, so we should probably concentrate on that a little bit. So IPTV is just seen as a piece of media in Signagelive. So it is just either a URL, so it's pointing at the stream, so RTP, UDP, :// whatever it be, and then that can be published as any other piece of media, just in the same way. So videos, images, web pages, and that's all we care about. We don't care what it is as such. You can manage the actual content that's on those channels and on those streams within the Exterity world, and then you're just publishing it to your digital signage to be able to make the digital signage part of that environment. Use it, as I said, you just use it like another piece of media, and I'll cover some of those bits in a second. And then one question that we haven't kind of heard actually today is HDCP and how that falls in with digital signage as well, and with streaming in general, because using HD content, we know that it's got some security around it that makes it so that you can't do that. And how does that fit in? Well, generally with things such as the Samsung Smart Signage platform, you wouldn't be able to handle that with an IPTV stream. Doesn't matter, you just put one of the Exterity players' set-top boxes behind it and use HDMI in, and then it's a HDMI in piece of content within Signagelive, and you've got exactly the same thing, but it's doing the handshake the whole way through so that you're fully covered around HDCP content. So I will come back just to the interactivity bit that Afrodita mentioned earlier as well, about the ways that you can use this. So we've got our general signage, we're using IPTV within that signage, but we also want to make an interactive experience. How can we do that? Well, there's lots of different ways using Signagelive that you can do that, and just because you're wanting that interactive experience doesn't mean you have to lose out on the IPTV. You can continue to use that in your general assets, and then when you start to interact with things such as lift and learn, or NFC and beacons, so beacons could be used with an application that as you walk into an area of your offices, your store, your phone becomes a control for that screen and allows you to take control of it. The content that you then trigger on the screen can be anything you like. It could, again, be another IPTV stream, allowing you to switch between channels, or it can be some other content that tells you some more about the thing that you're interacting with. But then we can fall back to our content that has the IPTV streams in there. So it's just keeping that piece of media and remembering that IPTV in the world of digital signage, and Signagelive especially, is just another piece of media, so we can use it however we like, just as we would any other media. So I just wanted to bring up a couple of the kind of examples. The one that we've got outside is showing and how that's built up. So we've covered a few of these earlier on about the sorts of ways that this can be built up, but you can see that the main zone is the IPTV zone, and we've actually got a little bit overlaying. So the green section on the top is overlaying, allowing us to build multi-layered templates to be able to just add that little bit of complexity or little bit of eye-catchiness to it. But also we've got some additional parts in here. So we've got the company meeting starts at 10 a.m. That can be linked to one of your meeting room systems, a calendar system, or using Signagelive's message manager, you can allow someone to be able to update that with some messaging. But that's the only thing that they have access to. They wouldn't be able to control any of the rest of the screen, just update that text. And then at the bottom you've got some sales KPIs, and that can be linked to, again, dynamic data. So using web widgets or widgets, but effectively they're just HTML5 applications mashed up and joined into a zip file and then published to the player, which can be hosted locally. So you're not having to rely on the internet to be there to be able to show some of this information. And if your internet goes down, but this information is pointing to a local source for data, then you continue to get that. So that's looking at maybe Salesforce data for your KPIs, or maybe Zendesk, something like that, or any system that you want to use that's got an API available, then that's just another piece of content. We can do that for you, or if you guys have got the skills in-house to be able to create some HTML5, again, it's just another piece of media within Signagelive, just another way of bringing the whole thing together. Just another layout to give you another example, and just some other pieces of media really. So you've got the weather widget there connecting to a live data source. We use forecast.io, which aggregates 5 different sources of weather to be able to give you, hopefully, an accurate weather. Although, obviously, I'm showing there that we're in the middle of the day, it's not raining. And then we've got social media. We don't do the social media because there's some issues around IP and being able to show that on digital signage. So we use partners that have already gone through that process. So as kind of we mentioned earlier on about being a platform for partners and content providers, that's what it's all about. So we're just the delivery mechanism really, and are looking to use the best of breed for those other pieces of media. So social media being Zoom, SceneSpire, screen feeds, something like that. So that's great. We've talked about the what, but how? And this is one of the things that I've kind of spent a lot of time on recently with some of the guys from Exterity about understanding the different ways that we can fit in. And the first one is obviously our ideal, and it's being right at the front, right at the end point. So we're the place where you're displaying it. Signagelive is the license right on that screen. That is brilliant for us because it means you get all of that information that we were looking at about on the dashboard. The management of the screen, being able to turn the screen on and off, being able to take remote screenshots of what's on the screen and report those on a regular basis, but also being able to give them the complete flexibility of being able to change what's on each individual screen within a location, not just on a channel. Again, as you can see, you've got the Exterity head end there on the LAN. Although Signagelive is in the cloud, and we're using that to control the screen doesn't need to be connecting to the cloud again to be able to get its content. So as long as you publish the content, as long as the player can connect and get its configuration, then everything else can come from locally on your local network. As we've got a few listed there with the different technologies that this is possible with as well. So the Samsung Smart Signage, LG WebOS, Philips was mentioned earlier, something that maybe in the future we'll be adding to that list as we continue moving forward with the smart technologies. Chrome OS, Windows, of course, and the iIdea devices. These are an interesting device because they are based on Android, but they're low cost, high power. So one of the devices is actually full 4K support, and that's full 60 frames per second, not 50 frames per second support as well, but is very low cost point. But one of those things, as soon as you see a low cost, you suddenly think, well, obviously it's not quite as good. That's not the case with these devices. So the other way And this is one that's a little bit harder for us to take, but actually, what's the problem? We're still involved, and you're still getting the benefits of Signagelive. But Signagelive sits in the rack at the head end. So you're using Exterity for exactly the sorts of things you normally would for your live TV and all the sorts of things that have already been talked about. But then why not put Signagelive in there as well? Signagelive as a player can sit in the rack and be an input to that head end. It can also take a stream anyway, so why not publish a stream to your Signagelive player and your digital signage, then push it back into the stream, or into an encoder, and push it out and use the IPTV as a distribution method. Yeah, so the good example for this is in stadiums, where you're looking at large volumes of screens wanting to show the same piece of content, or a number of different pieces, but not being able to actually manage each of the individual pieces of screens. So that's kind of a really quick overview of Signagelive, how it fits together, the different ways that you can achieve the same things with Signagelive sitting on top or behind, in fact.